By a flood of tears you made the desert fertile, and your longing for God brought forth fruits in abundance. By the radiance of miracles you illumined the whole universe. O our Holy Father James, pray to Christ our God to save our souls. Saint James the Ascetic lived in the 6th century near the city of Porphyrion, today Haifa, in Palestine. For 15 years he lived in a cave as a hermit, devoting himself to ascetic works, zealous in prayer, and mortifying his flesh. He so pleased God that he was granted the gift of miracle working, healing the gravely ill through his prayers. Though he never left his cave, many pilgrims came to visit him, even converting many Samaritans to the faith. The enemy of mankind, seeking his destruction, would send many temptations against him. A certain Samaritan, jealous of the holy man's successes, sent a prostitute to him one night, disguising her as a nun, with the intention of leading him into sin. The harlot wept and pleaded outside his door until he let her in, where she pretended to be suffering from an aching bosom, and asked the hermit to rub her to relieve the pain. Knowing he would yield to the temptation to sin, he did as she asked, but kept his left hand plunged into a fire near his side, holding it there as it scorched his flesh. The woman was filled with fear and terror at his superhuman endurance, and confessed why she had come. Repenting of her shameful deed, she agreed to enter a convent, where she began to progress in virtue of her own. Renown of the hermit's miracles spread, bringing crowds of visitors to his hermitage, so much so that, desiring peace, he moved to a quiet riverside cave 40 miles from his previous home. His many years of strict ascesis and the abundance of gifts and graces he received from God began to swell him with pride, assuming he had been fully perfected in virtue. The devil, circling like a vulture, sought an opportunity to exploit his pride. One day, a father came to St. James distraught with his daughter who was possessed with insanity by unclean spirits. The holy hermit freed her from her bondage through his prayers, but her father, fearing that she would come to be possessed again, left her to live for a time near the hermit's cave. The hermit, despite his many years of strict asceticism, was overcome by violent carnal lusts, and violated the girl whom he had cast out the demons. In shame and fear at what he had done, that it would become known to men, he killed her and tossed her body into the river to conceal his sin. As is common, the steps from the madness of lust to murder are often very close. When the voice of his conscience awoke the hermit at the extent of the horror of his deed, he relented to the devil's final attack and gave in to his despair, resolving to abandon the cave and prayer and return to the world. On the road, however, he met a holy elder passing by, who saw from the torment in his eyes that he had committed a grave sin, and convinced him to confess to him what he had done. After the elder exhorted him to have confidence in the mercy of God, James took his leave. He continued his way until he came upon an old, desolate tomb. Moving the bones to a corner, he began to pray to God. Tears began to stream from his face, and he spent 10 years in that dark tomb as a penitent, existing as a dead man in the open grave, unknown and forgotten to mankind, only emerging from the tomb at night to feed on some plants that grew nearby. The Lord, who desires not the death of the sinner, but that he should turn from his way and live, had granted forgiveness to the saint, unbeknownst to the man. At this time a great drought had struck the land, causing both men and livestock to suffer, and God inspired the nearby bishop to find a man named James, who confined himself to a tomb to pray for an end to the drought. The bishop located James, and coming with the people, asked him to pray for the heavens to open and to send rain to the land. With humility and tears, James prayed, and rain began to fall. As a result of the miracle of the rain, he was filled with hope that despite his grievous sins, God had forgiven him. Adding tears to tears as the days and years passed, and growing in humility, St. James at last surrendered his soul to God in peace at the age of 75. A church would later be built on the site of the tomb where he had found the grace of repentance. As St. Nikolai Velimirovic exposits, here is an example similar to that of David, of hot-blooded lust leading to murder, of how wicked the evil demon is, how by God's permission, the greatest spiritual giants can be overthrown, and how, through sincere and contrite repentance, God, according to his mercy, forgives even the greatest sins and does not punish those who punish themselves. He who falls from the greater height is injured more. Whoever is lifted to the heights, let him cautiously shield himself. The holy apostle writes, "Whoever thinks that he is standing secure should take care lest he fall. Let him fear God." James the Faster was a giant, according to the height of his soul, but he slipped from the heights, and the devil toppled him. One sin hastens to the other. Fornication rushes to murder. James the Faster punished himself, and God comforted him. One sin is able to erode all the virtues. Through one hole in the granary all the wheat pours out. A house filled with fragrances, one handful of filth empties it of redolence and fills it with stench. 100 victories and 100 celebrations do not help when in the final battle the head is lost. The spiritual life is a struggle against the hordes of the devil. In this battle, the proud are defeated from the beginning. Whoever invokes the name of God with profound humility will, in battle, be protected by God's mercy.